Great. Turn the camera off, and I'm going to share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're all good.
All right, cool. We're talking about Enscape. We have a love-hate relationship with it. It's a really great tool for just being super, super quick. The crazy thing is, like, we struggled really hard to find like high quality renderings. So the ones that you see, the top like 3-ish, are like the best ones we've done in-house, and the bottom right is like a good example of what it typically looks like. We don't want to show off too many crappy renderings, but Enscape's really good for what it is. It's a a plugin that launches directly out of the app. The problem with that is any geometry that lives in there can live in your Enscape model, nothing else. And there's some limitations when we think about the really large projects we typically deal with. But one of the nice perks of it is it does have a fantastic VR mode. We're able to stream it through the cloud, so we have a lot of flexibility for it. So it may not be the most high quality application out there, but it kind of fits some of the use cases we use it for. So when I kind of transitioned into leading up our visualization efforts, I kept hearing that almost like a pattern of like what the studio wants. And everyone was kind of fed up with Enscape. The biggest thing was the vis quality. Everyone was kind of dissatisfied with the quality. The glass didn't look so great. Everything looked kind of cartoony, kind of like The Sims. So how do we fix that, do that quicker? So people don't have to spend all this time and effort to make really high quality visuals. They just want it right out of the box. We want, fantastic AI tools. KPF's been really great about adopting AI. So we want, to reduce the tedium in our work. Like, we shouldn't have to make texture maps manually. So we're looking for applications that do that. Better compatibility with all of our tools. We ran into this issue where our Enscape didn't support Rhino 8, and we basically just couldn't update to Rhino 8 because of Enscape. Better dev support. Some of the larger companies, once they acquire these rendering engines, they just stop supporting the tool properly. If you ask them to add a feature, it takes 3 years to make it onto the roadmap. We don't work like that. We need results within a couple of weeks or a month, or we just can't use the product. And lastly, samples. People love them, people hate them, but it's difficult to have a 700-person firm and there's no unified visualization standards. So we needed something that could help us on that front. So looking at the marketplace, and I'm just going to minimize this little thing. We had to see what was out there. So obviously we've got Enscape, we've got Twinmotion, Lumion, D5, and those are great, fantastic real-time engines for any designer to use. Then you move on to kind of like your specialist tools, those who really are into visualization, who want the extra functionality. You've got Unreal Engine, Omniverse, V-Ray, Vantage, and they're all fantastic tools, but we need something that our designers can use. And then lastly, AI tools. What are people using right now in the industry? Midjourney, of course, Veros, which is based on Stable Diffusion, Runway, and Dolly. So the clicker doesn't work. Okay, good. So, I'm not going to go through all this, but we essentially had to evaluate these real-time engines based on the quality. So what is the out-of-the-box quality? Is it good enough for our standards? Does it have all the functionality that we need? Does it have all the fun AI stuff that we want? And what is the cost? Something we deal with, since we're 700 people, is like, what is the actual licensing structure? Is it floating or is it named user? So named user meaning you own this one seat. And what we've seen is if we have like 50 seats and I give it to somebody, they might just sit on it for like 6 months and never use it, and it drives me nuts. So we just try and avoid that altogether. We stick to floating seats, so it checks how many people are logged in and lets you know if you can use it or not. That's been huge for us. So if they have it, we use it. And then the scalability, does the software actually scale with the KPF project? Enscape was never built for firms like KPF. It was built for like really small shops that do maybe, one family, multifamily, residential. Not great for us. And that's why we're always bumping heads with it. Twinmotion, I'm a big fan of the guys at Epic. I think they're doing a great job. I think they're just a little slow to adopt some of the newer trends with AI. Lumion is great. Personally, I love it, but it's way too expensive. $3,600 per person is something we can't swallow. And then D5 Render, which we'll talk a lot about, is about $1,200 for a floating seat. So although it's more than Twinmotion and Enscape, it's floating. So that means I could have 10 people essentially using one seat, which is phenomenal. So then moving on to our specialist tools, all these tools, I think they're great. Like Unreal Engine, unlimited possibilities, extremely powerful, but a designer's not really going to use it. It's a little too complex. And we see the same thing with Omniverse. Extremely powerful, what they've done with the USD format. Insane, it's just too complex. And this is what we keep seeing with our specialist tools. Same thing with VRED, high quality renders, but it takes too long to render. It takes too long to learn. It's just not something we can have on a daily basis. And then there's a Vantage by Chaos, and this is kind of the midpoint of Enscape and VRED. It kind of bridges the two tools. It basically has more functionality than Enscape, but not as complex as VRED. And lastly, on the AI front, we have Midjourney generates beautiful, high quality images, but they're all random, right? It's from a prompt. It doesn't actually relate to our images. Then we have tools like Veros and Stable Diffusion, where the quality is really good, not as good as Midjourney, but it actually respects the images or the models being put in them. So when we have a design, our design just gets enhanced. It's not like a brand new random design because we want our designs to be preserved. Then there's Runway, which does really cool videos and a lot of rendering from text, but it's way too expensive for us to use. And then there's DALL-E, which I think has kind of trailed in terms of quality when compared to their competitors. So kind of where we landed is we're using, Enscape continued as our workhorse. That's not going to go away, but we've recently introduced D5 Render, which for those who don't know, it is built on Unreal Engine, just like Twinmotion. They're almost like step siblings, but I think D5's development is insanely faster than Twinmotion. So we've kind of migrated there. And the beauty of this workflow is if people want something higher quality, they can use D5. If they want to improve their existing Enscape scene, go straight to Vantage, and then we can use AI to kind of boost the quality of the renderings. So then this is a little trend that we've been showing, teams and leadership to understand, all these tools are available at KPF. It really depends on where you land in your project cycle. Are you starting from scratch? Is this conceptual? Do you need to improve your renderings? There's essentially a toolkit for you depending on where you're at. And we like to think of these render engines as just another brush. It's not going to do everything for you, but you have the available options to try something new. So, what I was saying, in terms of a project lifecycle, we're using Enscape for early conceptual work. And then as the design progresses, either it moves to Vantage, D5, and then followed up by AI to kind of enhance the overall quality. So I mentioned Vantage. It's basically Enscape's big brother. It bridges directly into it. So all the work you did in Enscape goes directly in Vantage. It does enhance the lighting and the visuals. In general, I think it's a good app. I just don't really love working in it. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit later. I think it's really important to have tools you like working in. So it's a great option for people to use if they need that extra quality. And then with D5 Render, we basically found that it checks pretty much every single box from the original problem set we had. And we're going to kind of go through why we think it's so great. So one thing that kind of blew us away is this idea of AI atmosphere match. So you upload a reference photo and it automatically changes all your environment settings, which is great because nobody wants to sit there and tweak the time of day, the color temperature and everything. It's automating a lot of the tedious tasks. And that's what we've been trying to figure out in this whole study. How do we make designers design more and, fight the software less? So here's a great study we did. We uploaded 6 different images, and then you can see the correlating rendering and how well of a job it did, matching the time of day. If it was a snowy image, it added snow. If it was rainy, it added rain. And, simple things like that really speeds up the process. So we're able to find a look and feel image, just plop that in, and within 30 seconds, you have a brand new, beautiful scene. And then going to the standards and the settings, one thing we've loved is this idea of a cloud team space. So all of our KPF standards, whether that's materials or environment settings, can live in the cloud. So any designer can go there, they can pull the typical KPF bright sunny day or sunrise environment settings, and there they go. And this was something we've been struggling for so long because every single team renderings look so different. So now that we're controlling the environment settings to some degree, obviously they can riff on it, but at least they have a starting point, and that's something that's always been missing. And then, because of the scale of the projects we work on, populating the environments takes so long. So they have this fantastic new tool called Scatter. It's basically a whole template of different species in one button. You literally drag it over, and you can customize, what species is in there, the spacing, the age of the trees. It's super powerful. So we can go, do our whole master plan urban setting in just a couple of minutes, and Cheryl has some great examples to showcase that. But of course, the cloud library, super powerful. So for those, coming from either Rhino or Revit, it basically looks at just the material channel. So that can come either from the category or from the layer. You can see down here, these bright colors are just like raw Rhino Revit geometry. It picks up each of those. So that blue is one material, that green is another. It's very easy to place it in there. The beauty of this is you don't have to mess with the source app's material editor. We have a lot of people complain like, oh, I don't want to render with Revit because I don't want to deal with the material editor. This completely avoids it because it's a standalone application. All right.
Thank you, Randy. So is it okay if I just hold it in my hand?
Well, then,
Okay. All right, so Andy just gave us a summary, really good summary of all the qualities that D5 has to offer, and really we found that through applying it on a real life project. So over here, what you see is Soho Bay in Shanghai, China. And can anyone take a guess at which one is the photo and which is the rendering? Left photo. Okay, that is correct. And this was made with D5 over here, just to highlight some of the qualities that have come through. You can see that immediately the glass is highly similar to what glass would look like in a real life setting. And it also comes with a whole library of models that you can use. So previously in Enscape, we would have had to model a lot of the context buildings, but here, right out of the box, there were a lot of things that we could just put directly into the context model, and that helped us speed up the modeling process significantly. And just to give a comparison of the render time, that's 46 seconds, pretty fast. Over here, we did another study. We wanted to summarize some of the other rendering engines that Andy covered earlier. And can anyone take a guess here which one is the photo, D5, Chaos Vantage, and Enscape? Okay, we have bottom right photo. Can anyone take a guess at which one's D5? Which one's your favorite, actually? How about that? Top left. Okay. So the top left is the photo. But after doing a study of these different rendering softwares, we found that D5 really came out with the most compelling glass reflections. And even the building on the right, that was also rendered in D5 and not photoshopped in. If we just look down here at the Enscape Vantage side by side, we can see that D5 render really makes the image pop a lot more, and that's one of the reasons why we like it so much. And then if we just compare the rendering times, there isn't a significant difference. Even though Enscape was much faster here, D5, it's not like ours. And in addition to that, some of the time-saving qualities that D5 brings to us are through the animation tools. So you can really quickly find a view that you like, apply one of the D5 templates, whether that's a horizontal pull, a push, a rise up, or a slide down. D5 will apply that for you, and you can arrange them into a series of little animations and export them just as quickly. With the interior parallax function, this also allows us to very quickly create a compelling image of the interiors, where in the past we may have had to model some of the interior furniture here with the click of a button, and also with these custom tools with the sliders, you can adjust the interior parallax to your liking. So just to apply it to our project here, Say for an aerial view, you might want to draw attention to your building, so you put in a light box, but that might not be as appropriate for a close-up picture. So with the interior parallax that we have set up in our cloud library, we just apply that there and instantly we get something that is a little more compelling at a closer distance. Then over here, we just want to highlight the different atmospheric functions and settings that is offered by D5. Just from going from one scene to the next, you can see over there, that's the transition that happens with the adjustment of the sliders. This is the aerial view that we saw earlier. And immediately with D5, this is all rendering in real time as well. You get the fog, the illumination, the scattering, and the clouds. And there is, I experienced very little lag of this, and that's definitely been a huge plus working within it.
All right, so being part of design technology, one of the biggest issues is kind of dealing with adoption. Like you find this cool brand new toy, how do we get it out to the studio? So this little formula that we've tested several times actually really works. So for anyone who's like trying to get adoption, this is what we recommend. So someone basically presents the idea. So in our case, it was like we need a better rendering engine, right? So once we do that, we find out which tool we should use. We start a small pilot program. This could be about 10 to 20 different power users. Sometimes it grows as the pilot runs on. And then we start performing some case studies. Are people actually saving time? Are they saving money? Are they happy? Are they having more fun using these apps? And if they do, then FOMO spreads. And what we've seen, especially at KPF, is I use this example of like, OMG, what is Tina using? And I hear that all the time. It's like, what are they using on that team? Like, it looks really cool. I want to use it. And that's how it spreads throughout the firm. And in just like a month or two of testing, now we have about 100 users, and that's nearing like our Enscape numbers, which is phenomenal. So we've seen like rapid adoption, and it really comes to just people being comfortable with it, being excited about it, and talking about it with the firm. And then this is just like a quote that I'm quoting myself, but it's just good advice, right? And I tell people in the firm like all the time, it's like, it's not about like the best tool. It's just like what aligns the most with the firm. And then just like, some pieces of, advice and tips. It's like, what are the easy wins? Like we were talking about how Enscape glass was like really bad. The materials didn't look as good, and lighting, we found a tool that improved that instantly, just right out of the box. It looks great. And we had, some champions that were, very vocal about how they really love using the tools. And so I think having all that makes it a very successful pilot. And obviously don't come off as a salesperson. It's just like, we're super excited about this. So if we come off sales, we're not getting like commission or anything. It's just, we've been so surprised and like amazed by the adoption we've seen. But at the end of the day, it should make people's lives easier. All right, so now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk a little bit about generative AI. All right, so in just about 2 years, we've actually seen an insane jump in quality. So on the left is version 1 of Midjourney, and then on the right is version 6, which is out right now. So the prompt for this was a New York skyline, which was photorealistic and dramatic. If you see on the left, everything looks, kind of crappy, silhouette-y. It actually doesn't make any sense as New York City. And then on the right, it looks like a pretty dramatic stock photo of New York. And this is just 2 years, right? So what is it going to look like in another 2? All right, so question for you guys. Which piece of cake is real or AI? You can just shout out answers.
Bottom left, yeah, real.
Bottom left is real? Final answer?
Top left is AI.
Top left AI. All right, let's see. Oh, it's all AI. But it's kind of crazy, it is. But it's kind of crazy when you like look at this image, like, you've got like the chocolate dripping over it, the layers of the cake kind of make sense. The fruits and the berries all look beautiful and realistic. And again, this is just like 2 years after development with Midjourney. So who knows what the cake's gonna look like in 2 years. So there's a little quick case study I did together. I want to put together like a random brutalist residential house with a lot of red. And this was me thinking I was clever to try and trick Midjourney, like, oh, there's no red brutalist projects out there. But I actually did like a really nice job making these beautiful, like compelling images. Like it added birds, and I feel like we all did that in studio. And I don't know, it looked beautiful, right? Like all these images looked like they belonged to the same project. And that's where it was getting kind of crazy, where one prompt was able to generate consistent results. So if we look at this image, beautiful image, but if we just focus on the details, like think about the horizon line, the little bumps on the ground by the sand, the reflection and the metalness, like this is imitating our render engines, and this is done in like 30 seconds. So what we were kind of seeing here is like with one prompt, we're getting consistent coloring amongst like 100 different images. Everything's well composed, like the photographer went out there. It took me 5 minutes. Everything looks super realistic, high quality geometry, and the lighting is phenomenal. So like all the stuff we struggle with render engines that takes years of practice, AI was able to do in just a couple of years. And now a user with no experience, like I could give my dad my phone and he can make these images, and he doesn't even have a cell phone. It's just kind of crazy.
And just to piggyback on what Andy said earlier, something that really impressed us was just the compelling realism of the images here and here. And even more so when we try to recreate an advertisement that we saw on Instagram, like there's absolute recognizability that is the Manhattan skyline. And the fact that it didn't distort anything was highly impressive. So I think something else that we also found very interesting was that in the examples that Andy showed us earlier, it was the shot of a building from a pretty consistent distance. And we wanted to push that further to think that with these tools, we can also create a fairly consistent set of imagery of a project. So just going from an aerial view to the architectural scale, to the experience of the room, it just through some prompting, you can get them all to look like they're from the same design proposal. Going to what was it? Toolkit.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what KPS is doing with AI. So we've been, monitoring all this AI stuff for the past year and a half. And what we've seen from our users, most of the generative AI work falls into 4 different categories. One is to generate precedent images. So instead of going to Pinterest or Google Images, you're able to generate like project-specific images. The ability to stylize renderings with just one prompt, taking something semi-real, making it look watercolor. That's something we've always struggled with Photoshop. So being able to do that with AI is huge. This concept we've been calling instant rendering or facelifting. Basically ingesting a really crappy Enscape rendering and then having it boost it within 30 seconds to make it look more photorealistic. Huge. And then expediting post-processing with tools like Photoshop, Generate Fill, /Firefly. You can see like that area that's dotted in the bottom right. That's all AI. It's actually just me outcropping the image. So I'm expanding the canvas and it's filling in the details. It does a fantastic job with that. Then on the text-based stuff, if you think about like ChatGPT, Bing Chat, Copilot, whatever you want to call it, it's been useful to help rewrite, project descriptions or emails, even generate prompts. You can have it describe an image to you if you drop that into Midjourney. And it's kind of great to chain all these tools together. Because we found that prompt writing is actually the hardest part of the generative AI side of things. So like we have these fantastic designers that just don't know what to say when it comes to writing. So we basically say, find a pretty picture you like, have ChatGPT explain it to you, and then drop it into Midjourney to generate images. And kind of where this falls in our timeline is, Midjourney is a great conceptual tool when nothing exists. And then we have Vero Stable Diffusion for when we actually have renderings to either enhance the image or change the style. And then lastly, we have Photoshop Generate Fill to kind of, tweak our images as needed. So similar to the images we were showing before, these are like actual projects that we've been doing where, design directors are able to sit there and instead of needing a team to come up with renderings and models, they can just figure out what the look and feel of the project should be. And these are all from the same prompts, tweaked slightly, but it looks like from the same project. So a client, they see this and they're like, oh my God, KPF's done so much work for me. This is phenomenal. Let me hire them for more work. And it's great that teams don't need to pull all-nighters all the time and they can just do this. So we were talking about facelifting. Here's an example. Just look at the foliage, the textures of the all the materials. That guy's biceps in the bottom left. It's crazy what it's able to do in just 30 seconds. Reflection improved, skylines added. So it can be as subtle as you want or as drastic as you want to. Here, typical workflow that we see, the ingestion of Enscape, then Veros outputs, higher quality reflections, interiors, and lighting. So instead of spending all of our time on a rendering engine, we can actually just export it out to AI. Same thing with stylizing renderings. There's some situations where we just don't want something photorealistic, like the materials haven't been figured out, and this is when we'll use something with style tip. Yeah, and here it's like a great study we did just using different artist names, different mediums, and how drastic every single image looks from each other. So we've really been trying to figure out, which are our favorites, what should be like the KPF stylized AI render. Okay, and then this, I get this all the time, and it drives me nuts, but is AI taking your job? No, it's not taking anyone's job. Not us, the people in this room, it's not taking our jobs. And big caveat is, if you think about what the architect does, right? We exist in person, right? We deal with clients, we deal with construction feasibility, legal issues. AI doesn't do any of that. It's such a small portion right now of what we do. The pretty images and the design, like what is that, 5, 10, 15% of the whole project cycle? Like it's not going on site, it's not picking up the phone, it's not drawing anything yet. So I think we're totally safe until it can do all this. Like we have to remember that all these LLMs are really good at like one specific thing, right? They can't do everything humans can do. So that's why we're safe. So don't worry so much.
So here's a bit of a throwback to an earlier format, just continuing the conversation that Andy has posed for us. Can anyone take a guess at which one is AI?
All of them.
Oh, okay. In fact, what I prepared for you was, that was AI, that was oil on canvas, epoxy resin, someone took a photograph. And I think the point that I wanted to get across with this slide is that, maybe it's also nice to see AI as just another medium, as part of our tool set, because it's definitely not stopping people from taking pictures or painting or, creating arts and crafts. So back to the question, is AI taking our jobs? I think earlier in the day, we were having a bit of a conversation. So maybe this is something that you all can think about too. People are saying AI won't take your jobs, but someone who knows how to use AI will. And then there's the other view that I want to pose. AI is not going to replace jobs, and it's going to augment how we all do work. So how can you use AI on the job? In the segment, we were kind of thinking about, well, I think there are like ways to quickly visualize different scenarios with your existing models. Say you really quickly draft up a massing and you just want to see it in different ways. That's one way that AI will augment our workflow. And then say you're also dealing with a ton of design options. Now in the past, when we wanted to couple that with performance analysis, that was really great in giving us information on which design option to choose, especially in regards to like how it performs with daylight analysis or its impact on the context around us. But say we wanted to pair that with visualization. In the past, we had to go through the full process that we walked through earlier with assigning materials, towards geometry, setting up views. But with AI, there's the capacity to add that extra component so that we can analyze multiple variables at the same time as we narrow down our design options.
Just to wrap up this segment, I've been calling the AI creativity paradox. And basically the question is, and I don't know the answer, but is AI actually creating anything new, right? So it's able to generate all these amazing, fantastic ideas, but is it actually creative, right? And if we think about humans, right? If we, think of all the experiences we go through our whole lives, all the images we look at, everything we consume, is that any different from the AI's foundation model where it ingests billions of images, right? Are humans and AI very similar? Kind of, but I actually don't know the answer to this, and it's kind of interesting because like what makes us human versus AI, right? So I'll leave you guys with that. But yeah, open it up to a discussion, questions. Want to connect with us on LinkedIn? Give us a scan. But yeah, thanks for having us. Hope you enjoyed our rant on AI and biz.
You guys teaching your users like all people in the firm how to use like T5 rendering, or is it a lot of you guys doing the renderings? Like are you Andy doing a lot of testing and then you're finding out what's new? Like how do you go about that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our team is like extremely small. Like we cannot do, we're not like an in-house biz studio. So we really try to empower the users. We'll do the initial testing. Once we vet it and we really like the tool, we'll have our pilot teams get like really, comfortable, used to it. And then after that, once it's kind of out in the wild, we hold workshops all the time. We've got like a great user group, like group chat thing going on where we're constantly sharing work, tips and tricks, but we really leave it on the users to learn a lot with our help. Like we don't just say, here are the keys to drive off. Like we actually do go through everything with them. Like we provide as much help as possible.
Did you guys to present your ideas to partners to get approval? Like how did you I know you said you're not a salesman, which I do understand, but how do you go about like getting approval to be like, oh, we're gonna use T5 versus, et cetera?
Yeah, so we did when we were doing a pilot project, one of the teams sent me their renderings and they said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that we actually didn't use an outsourced rendering company at all. So we saved like 20 grand on this project. I just spent the whole afternoon in T5. Yeah. So I wound up having a meeting with we have these like steering committee meetings where we meet with leadership and talk about like what we've been doing. And we brought that up and like their eyes lit up. They're like, holy crap, why are we not using T5 everywhere? Right. Because these are the same people saying like Enscape is like losing its jobs, the quality is bad, the clients are complaining. So once they saw that, they were actually unable to tell okay, what was a T5 render or an outsourced render. They were actually choosing the wrong one, which is great. That really helps sell the point. So we do a lot of that, but we did have to get some of their buy-in just so they can promote it. Because it's difficult if a junior is like, hey boss, I'm going to try out this new tool. Probably can take me a little bit longer to learn. It's much easier when the principal or the design director sees it and they're like, why aren't you using this tool?
So about the tool like E5, the company defense escape is the back and forth between Rhino and the render that you're operating, because there's that kind of break almost that happens where you start modeling and you jump into Twinmotion or V5. Has that come up as an issue when designers aren't actually using those tools on projects? Because sometimes those things are not very clean when they're being tested in isolation.
Right. So to talk about Twinmotion briefly, one of my biggest issues with their live sync is it's not actually live sync. Everything they could change. You have to wait for the stupid bar to fill up. With D5, there is the live sync option. So it's just like what they're used to with Enscape. And then you also have like the geometry freeze option where you import it as a standalone. So you have two options. So it was actually easy for them, like, oh, okay, this is how I use Enscape. I can use this way, live sync, or I can do the geometry freeze method. What I've been telling people is like I actually prefer to use D5 as like the container model or container file, or you just import all your 3Ds or Revit model into there, and you can just toggle them on and off instead of having the big Rhino or Revit file. It's like impossible to manage. But yeah, a lot of the workflow stuff comes up in the pilot groups, and what we've loved about D5 devs is like anytime we've had an issue, we like ask them if you can add this feature, and like in a month, like we get the feature, which is awesome. So that's why it's important to like have those close relationships with vendors.
So we usually export the images from Enscape to the AI tools. Do you usually use text to image prompt or just image to image?
It's a combo because we want a little bit of control because we want to be able to tell it like, let's say someone uploads a day scene and they want it to be night, having it the text section is super, super important. But yeah, I mean, you can do it both ways, because there's some teams that are like, oh, I want this style, right? Can I merge my image, but I want it in this style? So it really depends on the type of project they're working on. So it's a combo.
You still need to do a lot of extra mapping before, plug it into the AI tool.
Right. So that actually didn't have an example of that, but that's actually one of the benefits. Is like we can have these like really rough massing models and just say like it'll give us this brick clad and it'll just do all that for you and you don't even need to model. So our modeling and render time have like decreased, and now there's just more iteration on the AI side.
All these applications, obviously the software are fantastic. How does KPF keep up with the compute and hardware infrastructure types of demands that all these take? So especially some of the rendering times you're talking about, to be able to run Twinmotion in 2 minutes, that takes a special.
Yeah. So our like standard issue laptops, they're not like gaming laptops, they're not like geared for that, but they are like the Quadro cards, so they do have more video RAM. But we actually have this like cloud compute program. It's like a cloud platform for remote desktops. So if we need like extra hardware or like we want like another virtual machine, we can send it there and it has like a better like GPU better than our laptops. So sometimes we'll just like queue up a batch of renders, animations, and then we'll just have the remote desktop queue it up.
So you're saying like when you send stuff to AI, it takes you like 30 seconds to open it. But you're prompting it, right? So how would it take to come up with like a really good prompt? It's not 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. It's like an English problem.
Yeah. Right before you said that.
Yeah, it's like how well can you communicate, and that's why I like the workflow of grabbing an image, dropping it into like chat or ChatGPT, because it will just write the prompt for you. Some people struggle because like we are a global office, and not everyone, English is not the native language for everyone. So that workflow has been great, but there's been plenty of time where I do an onboarding and I'm like, I don't know what to say, and I always say like the same formula, think of the time of day, the lighting, the location, the material, what's going on in the foreground, the background, and that usually helps them. Going back to what you were asking, like we've given them all these different templates and tools and like tips and tricks for them to kind of go through that process. But yeah, the prompting is the hardest part, which is crazy. If I thought it'd be the image making, but no, it's from English.
Does D5 do the custom images?
So yeah, a little sneak peek, but they are working on like an integrated AI renderer, where you can just like render under it normally, and then you can do AI enhancements to it.
I find that work. My firm's currently just looking to AI and rendering and all that stuff, and currently finding that the prompting is like it changes geometry, which we never ever want. So we're all the ones that you can put across in the image, so one set we're gonna invest time into developing and understanding. Just because the prompting, like there are classes now on how to prompt like AI or stuff like that. We can't like us uploading an image is much more effective than just trying to write that's what we didn't say. Like give us what we want.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why like we have subscriptions to Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, because Midjourney is just all random. It doesn't care about what your image is. Looks at it as a reference, but completely changes the structure. And in Stable Diffusion, we can actually tweak how much of the structure is.
When using Stable Diffusion, you can also like build your own database already.
Yeah, so of the actual renderings.
Like all the outputs that you have, particularly, you can just use that as a model. You can train that as a model to be like the same thing or Stable Diffusion.
Yeah.
Or like, is there any like fun way or model that you would recommend?
I mean, for us, what's made like more sense is to take, because when you're asking about like the texture mapping, like feeding it our actual built KPF project was more effective. So it understand like our patterns of rhythm of facade material palette, and then that way the outputs are more in line with what we've been proposing. The outputs, it's interesting, like if the quality is good enough, yeah, it could probably make it into the training set. Not bad yet. But we found it's even better to just like share that with people, like, oh, this is what this team did, that style, this is the prompt, and then other people can learn and follow and copy that.
I have one more, sorry. Did you guys look into the legality of like using AI as a firm?
All I do, man.
Yeah, just because, like, the AI is what you put into it, right? So, we're currently testing with projects that are built and done, not projects that we're working on, due to the fact that like AI is probably learning from the images that you put, the prompting that you're doing, et cetera, and it takes that and learns from it, and that's how it grows. So, what have you guys found? What are you worried about? Is there any like pause due to legal issues?
Some platforms, like I've had to read so many pages of privacy policies and terms of services, and like some of them explicitly say like, we do not, train on your images, which is great, because then we can upload it, it's all safe. But then there's some that are like very big and generic, and whenever you like ask them about it, they're like, yeah, okay, we're actually training. And that's been the hardest part, because designers will be like, well, I found this great AI platform, I'm gonna use it. And you can't, because we haven't vetted it yet, and it takes a while to get in touch with their legal department, then our legal department has to check it. Whole thing. Cool.
Lovely.
Make sure you wear it.
Thank you so much. Obviously very informative, very engaged. I would say let's just check in with our host. Let's, maybe hang out for another like one drink out on the rooftop maybe, and then not overstay our welcome. I just want to be able to come back here. So like, I don't know, half hour or so, and then everybody roll out. Those of you who've been here before know me that there's always a bar downstairs around the corner. We can still extend the night if somebody wants it. Thank you so much. And we're setting the next thing up for September. It's probably gonna be scanning for well. So not just geometry, but like a 12 different parameter type of thing. Hopefully I'm getting the nod in here for that. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.